Today's video, I'm going to show you how to keep your rope from unraveling. My name is Brian and you're watching Survival on Purpose. Okay, well, welcome back to Survival on Purpose. Thanks for joining me. As I said, today's video, I'm going to show you how to keep your rope from unraveling. And one of the first requirements for the first rank advancement in the Boy Scouts, which is tenderfoot, is to know how to fuse and whip a rope. And so there seems to be a little confusion about that amongst some people. So what we're going to do today is going to show you a couple of things you can do to keep your rope from doing this. One of those is fusing, and one of them is whipping the end of the rope, as it's called. So let me readjust this camera, get close up down here where you can see it, and we'll get started right away. Okay, let's talk just for a minute about some different types of rope and line that you might encounter, you might run into, or need to use in the outdoors. First of all, the main difference you need to be aware of is the difference between natural rope and synthetic rope. That's just like it, basically just like it says. Natural rope is made of natural materials, organic materials, hemp or sisal or jute or something like that. And you can usually tell those kind of rope because A, they're going to burn, not melt, as opposed to synthetic rope, which is made out of typically nylon, polyester. Typically nylon is going to be your strongest. These are all, this is a natural rope here. This is a twisted natural rope. You can see obviously that the strands are twisted together, and this also kind of curly, so it's pretty stiff, so we're going to get it out of the way for now. This is a twisted nylon rope, another twisted smaller nylon rope. Now there's another difference you need to be aware of besides twisted, and that's typically two different kinds of rope, either twisted or braided. You see, these are twisted with separate strands, whereas this one is braided. And what will happen is it won't really come untwisted, but the end will just fray out like that. Another really common outdoor piece of cordage is paracord, 550 cord. And this happens to be green. And it has a woven outer core, or outer sleeve, I guess. And in the core, if you go to the inside of it, if you can kind of slip it down a little bit, grab those inner layers. And true 550 cord has 7 smaller inner layers. And they are comprised of twisted nylon, and you can see, so they'll come untwisted. And you got to be careful when you're buying this, because some of the cheaper stuff they call paracord doesn't really have these inner cores. One of the advantages of paracord is if you need smaller lines, you can get them out of it. You can strip them out, and you can actually have, if you carry 10 foot of this, you can actually have 70 feet of line or so. So that's paracord. And then another really popular type of cordage or line is bank line, tarred bank line, catfish line sometimes it's called. And it's just a tarred nylon, typically twisted line. Now they do make this in braided, and I actually tried some of it, but it's not nearly as useful as the twisted bank line. And this is, if you get the good stuff, and I got a video showing the difference between the Walmart brand and the good stuff, you can be sure and check that out, because if you get the good stuff, you can see it's got a lot of tar on it. Let me get my hand behind here where you can see it. A lot of tar. It just holds itself out stiff. That tar lends itself to keeping it weatherproof, weather resistant, keeps it from rotting and mildewing, and it also just makes it a little easier to work with. It helps it to stick together to itself on knots and whatnot. But you can also see this is a twisted line consisting of 3 strands. So you can also untwist this and come up with 3 separate little strands if you need to. And so this is a real popular type of cordage or rope line, whatever you want to call it, for outdoors. One more time, and I'm actually going to use this for demonstration because it's easy to see it on the color, but this is a real cheap rope. It's just a woven polyester outer core. Not really that great for outdoor use. It doesn't hold knots very well, and it's just not very strong. We're going to use it today because it contrasts with the rope, the twine we're going to use to fix the ends of these ropes and to whip the ropes. And what we're going to use for that today is waxed nylon rope or twine. You can actually use really smaller bank line. They make this in a lot of different sizes. I don't happen to have any handy, so we're going to use this. So let's talk about how to solve this problem. Okay, so when you're looking at smaller ropes, typically nylon or synthetic in general, you're not going to want to whip something this small, or even paracord. You're going to want to fuse this. And the way you fuse it is you melt the end of it together. So I'm going to use my Zippo lighter. You can use a candle, you can use a match, you can use a fire. In this case, you're going to use a lighter. And let me readjust this because I want to show you something that I've noticed with other people trying to do this that maybe will help you out. Okay, I've noticed a lot of people they want to put down in the flame here, and that'll work, but the hottest part of this flame is going to be at the very tip, so it's going to work a lot faster, and you can see that thing just melting. If this thing catches on fire, you really don't need it. So you can see the end of it's just melted in like that. Now you can twist it up and stuff, but you got to be really, really careful, because what's going to happen is this is molten, melted plastic, basically synthetic. You get this on your hands, it's going to burn and it'll stick. So you want to let it cool off for a minute, but you can see that now is not going to fray out. You don't have to worry about it doing this on you. So anyway, that's my little tip. Just make sure you put what you're fusing in the very tip of the flame. I'll show you with another bigger piece. So this is a piece of the braided. Typically on braided, you're always going to want to fuse it because it's going to be smaller. Anything smaller than 3/8 of an inch or so, you're probably going to want to fuse it. So again, ooh, just refilled my lighter. It's a little warm. So you're going to be at the very tip of the flame. And when you have, I'm going to show you what this is. When you have a great big already unfused thing, you're going to wind up with a gigantic fireball there on the end of it. Just let it burn for a minute. Don't put your hand under it because it's liable to drip molten synthetics down on. But after it gets, then you can just kind of blow it out. I like to roll that maybe roll it on the stump or something. You know, roll it on a piece of wood to smooth it up. But I would not touch it with my hands while it's super hot. So that's fusing, and you can do the same thing with a piece of the bank line. It actually works really well because it is so small. Whoo, man. Doesn't take very long. One of the things you can actually do when you're fusing this small stuff, when you're tying a knot, you can kind of tip the end off and almost like fuse it together where your knot's not going to come undone. Let me wrap this up and let this lighter chill out. I just refilled it and it's leaking on my hands. Really don't need to catch myself on fire. That might be an interesting video, but it wouldn't be very much fun. So a small rope, this size, paracord like this, maybe even this size, you can fuse it. This is borderline. I'm going to show you the difference between fusing a rope this size and and whipping the rope. So let's start with the fusing. I'm going to go and cut these tags off. Take the lighter of death here for a minute. Roll it on down. And go ahead and burn in my Ranger band. If you twist it around a little bit and kind of keep it even, this is about the maximum size rope that you really want to fuse and get good, because what happens is when the strands are as big as they are, you really got to get them melted together really good, or they're just going to come apart on you, and you'll have 3 strands with fused ends. So the individual strands will be fused, but the whole rope won't be. And I'll try to maybe roll them together like that and twist them in the direction of the twist. And hopefully once that cools off, you can see that you're going to wind up with a solid cap, kind of on the solid cap or plug of molten, burned, melted material on the end of this that'll keep it from unraveling. But if you get much bigger than this, you're really going to want to learn to whip the rope. So I don't want to keep dragging this out. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to whip the rope. I'm going to show you the way the Boy Scout book shows you, which I think is very hard. And then we'll talk about another way that's a little easier. So let's get this rope out of the way. And I did want to show you one thing. So on a natural rope, just to show you, you're not going to be able to fuse a natural rope at all. You're going to have to whip it. I don't care what size it is. You can either whip it, or you can take the shortcut, and this works too, duct tape. Just duct tape the end of it really, really tightly, and that'll keep it from unraveling also. That's a less than permanent solution, but it may be permanent. So, okay, so we got a piece of natural rope here. We're going to try to fuse the end of it. What's going to happen is, if anything, you're either just going to singe it, or you're going to wind up with a fire. So what happens is this thing's kind of on fire now. So you have a nice ember if you're trying to start a fire, but it's not going to do anything for keep the rope from unraveling. By the way, I pretty much prefer synthetic rope. I just think it's stronger. It's the only advantage in my mind of having a natural rope, unless you're trying to stay true to the, you know, traditional, maybe doing some reenactment or whatever, is you can use this possibly to start a fire. You fray it open and it will catch a spark maybe. But I'm going to show you the Boy Scout way to whip a rope. And what I do is I take this, we've got the wax string here. We're going to just cut off a piece of wax string. I'll say, I don't know, a foot long or something like that. And the wax string, if you can use unwaxed, but the wax just works so much better. Just makes it a lot easier to, it's a lot easier to control. So, and we're going to use, for the sake of demonstration, this cheap green rope here, but I think it'll help you to see, you'll be able to see the process a little better on the green. Let me zoom this in a little more. Get this over here, you can see it. Okay, so what the Boy Scout show to do is you make a loop with this rope, and basically you've got it like this. So you've got a loop, one on each end, if you can see that. Okay, you're gonna lay this loop on the rope here, like so. And then you let one end stick out here, like so. I got a little close. So we got one end sticking out and the other end sticking out. So you make a loop, like so. I'm gonna try to get this where you can see it. You put the loop, lay it on the end of your rope, like so. Then you hold it in the middle, you take your loose end, the part of your loop, and you hold it with your finger and you start wrapping around. And you make the first wrap on top of itself so it locks in here, like that. So you make your first wrap on top of itself. And you gotta make sure this tag end just keeps sticking out. And you gotta keep wrapping around that tag end. So you wrap around and you're holding on to the loop, and you gotta get that little end out of the way every time. Wrap around, onto the loop, and get that end out of the way. So you're still holding this loop here. And if your loop's not big enough, it turns into a real pain in the neck. I didn't make mine quite big enough, but the goal is you wanna have enough wraps so that your width of your wrap here, this width, is the same as the diameter of your rope. So we're almost there, and we're gonna wrap around a couple more times. So you gotta keep moving this loop and making sure that's not tied in. So you get it around, maybe you got room for one more, okay. So now you make sure your tag's out there. So what you wind up with at the end of this process is you've got a loop here on the end. You got your other end sticking out up under here like this. And you got this loop here. And you want to make sure that this end is running through the loop. Because what's going to happen is you're going to pull this one. When you pull this, it's going to shorten that loop up. See it shortening that loop. And it's going to tighten itself around this one. And then it's going to lock itself in. And you pull these things together really tight like that. And what happens is you've got a knot underneath here. And you pull them really tight. And there you've got it. So that is the Boy Scout way that they show in the Boy Scout book. It works absolutely great. There's nothing wrong with it. I think it's a pain in the neck, honestly. I'm gonna go ahead and cut that out of the way now and show you the way I would do it. And there's nothing wrong with the Boy Scout way. I just think it's a pain in the neck. Okay, so we've got about the same amount of wax thread. What you want to do is you want to make a loop about 2 inches or so in the rope. Okay, take that on the end and lay it on the rope like this with the loop facing. So in other words, you're running both running ends of your rope. This is called the running end. This is called the loop. You want the running end off with the rope. Then you just kind of hold it in place with your thumb for a minute. Take the long end, start wrapping it around. Just leave the short end alone. Okay, and then wrap it over itself, just like wrap it over itself, just like that. Okay. Like that. And then you're doing the same thing, but you don't have that loop to contend with to try to fight. You just got a straight loose end here, okay? So and then you just start wrapping. And again, at the end of the day, you're going to come up with exactly the same process. So we've got wrapping it there like that, okay? And so now what you've got just like that. You've got the one coming out the end you started with, you got this loop around here, and you've got your loop out here. You're going to take the end that you just wrapped, stick it through the loop, okay, and then you're going to pull the other end. And just keep, you might have to do a little adjustment to make sure it doesn't get crazy on you, but go ahead and pull it out. Keep pulling. And when you get them all together down there, you kind of dress it up, just go ahead and pull this kind of through and pull them tight. And then you can trim the ends off. And if you have a Swiss Army knife, it's really easy to do that, but with the scissors, but if not, just and you wind up with a really nicely whipped rope. It's not going to fray out beyond this point here. Whatever's beyond the whipping, of course, can fray out, but the rest of it won't. And in my mind, that's a lot easier than the Boy Scout way. Either way works. You find use either way. There's probably several other ways, but there you have it. That's the simplest way I know to whip a rope. Okay, well that was how to whip and fuse a rope. And this is a really great way to keep your ropes from just going to pieces on you, so to speak. And so once again, there are probably several other ways of doing that. If you know of another way, leave a comment below. Share it with us. We'd be interested in hearing what you got to say. Hope this has been helpful. This is one of the skills that if you're a young Boy Scout, you're going to have to learn. And we as adults, it's always a good skill to have to maintain your rope, because rope is very important. Cordage is important in outdoor survival or any kind of situation. And if you don't take care of it, it can definitely go to pieces on you. You don't want that to happen. So I hope this has been helpful. As always, thanks for watching Survival on Purpose. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for clicking that thumbs up below if you like it. Let Google know you like this kind of video. And share it with your friends if you think they'll like it too. I'd appreciate it. Again, leave your comments below if you've got anything to add to this, if you've got a new way or a different way of whipping rope or fusing rope, or just any kind of ideas you think might help us out. We really appreciate it. Once again, my name is Brian. You're watching Survival on Purpose. Remember, survival is not an accident, so be prepared. See you next time.